I'm Vincent Darcangelo from the Department of Pennsylvania, and beside me is Larry DeAngelo from the Department of Florida. And we comprise, we're two of the members of the POW MIA committee. And basically we're going to give you some information, some new information, recent developments in the POW issue with the Department of Defense Prisoner of War Missing in Action Office, as well as some old history on the POW issue. And later on, during my part of the presentation, I'm going to give you some astounding information I just learned this past June when I went to the National Alliance of Families annual seminar forum. But to start it off, we're going to turn it over to Larry DeAngelo. He's going to give you some information and statistics.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to start off with just giving you some information on the amount of POWs and MIAs from the different conflicts. In World War II, we had 124,079 POWs. We still have 30,314 MIAs. In the Cold War, we have no idea how many POWs, but we did have 343 MIAs. And in Korea, we had 7,140 POWs and 8,177 soldiers, Air Force, who were listed as MIA in the Korean War. In the Vietnam War, as of yesterday, the statistics breaks down like this. From Vietnam, 1,555. In Laos, 445. In Cambodia, 75. And in the waters, the territorial waters of China, 8. I'm going to give a real brief history on the POW issue, and Vincent will give you the latest statistics. He's been doing it a lot longer than I have. This is my first year involved. As you know, the U.S. government has steadfastly denied that prisoners were left behind or that any effort has been made to cover up their existence. But following the Paris Peace Accords of January 1973, U.S. prisoners of war were returned during Operation Homecoming during February through April '73. During this time, 591 POWs were released to U.S. authorities. This included a few captured in Laos and North Vietnam. Then U.S. President Richard Nixon announced that all U.S. servicemen taken prisoner was accounted for. We know that's not true. At that time, the U.S. listed 2,646 Americans missing in action. The total was that among 1,350 with prisoner of wars and 1,200 reported missing in action, giving us a total of 2,646. The U.S. conducted some limited operations in 1974 to find the remains of those missing and present to the Paris Accords. The North Vietnamese returned some remains too. These efforts had halted following the collapse of the Accords and the fall of South Vietnam in '75. During the 1980s, the United States Special Forces member Bo Britz undertook a series of private trips into Southeast Asia, purportedly to learn and locate American POWs. These missions were heavily publicized, controversial, and widely declared haphazard. For instance, as some commentators stated, for successful secret missions involved bringing to the border towns women-only marketing commemorative POW rescue T-shirts. In other words, they were saying, now this was only done so the families could sell POW shirts. I really take that. That really bothers me. The POW issue kind of got popularized by the film industry in films like Rambo. The very first one, though, was Chuck Norris's 1978, The Good Guys Wear Black. I don't know if you remember that. But then they did the Rambo series, and that popularized the POW, and that opened up a lot of people's eyes who poo-pooed it before. They said, wait a minute, there might be something about this. Ranking minority member on the Senate Foreign Veterans Relations Committee, Senator Jesse Helms of North Carolina, became interested in the matter. In October 1990, his chief of staff aide prepared a report stating it was probable there were live POWs still being held and that Bush administration was conflicting and hiding the facts. The report also alleged that the Soviet Union had held American prisoners after the end of World War II, and many have been transferred during the Korean War and the Vietnam War to the Soviet Union. I'm not going to go into too much more. I'm just going to go from the heart now. When I first got back from my tour of duty, I knew there were people still over there. I knew it in my heart, I knew it in my brain. At that time, I lived in New York, and I lived on Staten Island, New York, and I started the New York City POW MIA Recognition Day in that city. And it still goes on today. I'm very proud of that. I'm going to end, I want Vincent to take, but I do want to come up with one thing. When America is not worth the effort, when an American is not worth the effort to be found, then America is very, very much lost.
Okay, thank you, Larry. I've been on the committee for several years now, and just want to give you some recent information. Not too long ago, I got a call from our National Adjutant, Mark Burgess, and he indicated there was going to be a meeting at the Pentagon, and he requested that I either attend the meeting in person or by teleconference. And basically what the meeting was about, as you may know, one of the multiple scandals involving the Veterans Administration right now, and Department of Defense in particular, is all the embarrassing situations that have been happening within the Department of Prisoner of War Missing in Action Office and the POW Accounting Command, JPAC. And during that conference, it was led by the Assistant Secretary of Defense under policy, and his name was Michael Lumpkins. And the recurring theme of that conference, or of that teleconference, was they kept saying reorganization and restructuring. It has been well documented of the infighting between JPAC and DPMO to the point that it is now dysfunctional, and there just isn't a whole lot of identifications taking place. They were mandated by Congress and the President to begin next year identifying and accounting for 200 missing in action a year. This past year, they've only accounted for, I think it's around 30. So it is, indeed, the mission is far from being completed, and a complete reorganization and restructuring was in the mix to be done. The good news about it, the new agency, they haven't named it yet, by the way, but they announced that they were going to try to declassify from all intelligence agencies from past wars all of the classified documents and records. And of course, this was promised back during the 1990s at the Senate Select Committee hearings, but that never came to be. We don't know the name of the new organization, but I'm sure we're going to find out very soon. Congressional pressure on those two agencies has been intensifying And that's why even Congress is saying we have to reorganize this, our effort in the MIA area. Could have been Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel when he announced the changes, but there's going to be another consolidation of those two agencies, DPMO and JPAC. But again, they did this in 2003. The Pentagon spends about $100 million a year to recover and identify missing service members from Vietnam, Korea, and World War II. But in the last year, they identified just 60, far short of the 200 per year mandated by Congress. The investigation found that the mission is hampered by outdated science, overlapping bureaucracy, and poor leadership. They also use the word, they have to streamline the inefficient and duplicative process. DNA is being used by countries all around the world for identifications, yet are currently in our Silhai Central Identification Lab in Hawaii, which is being moved over here into the States. They don't even use DNA as their first primary source to try to account for remains. The latest restructuring effort is the broadest yet, taking on the science used to make identifications. In the past, the two long-troubled, soon-to-be combined agencies, JPAC and DPMO, are themselves the product of an earlier consolidation, which I just mentioned back in 2003. Critics on Capitol Hill and family advocacy groups, and among former employees of the agencies, all said that in order to have a meaningful, lasting impact, the changes must go beyond the bureaucratic reshuffling of personnel to instead include new leadership. They received 50 complaints from current employees of those agencies stating why they can't accomplish more and about the infighting and battles for territory. Anytime you have a change that's truly philosophical, it's difficult to accomplish if the person being tasked with it still believes in the old way of doing things. In other words, they've done this reshuffling in the past, and what they did, they took the same people that were responsible for certain duties, put them in the new agency, and continue with the old way that they used to do it, which was inefficient. The current system, according to Michael Lumpkins, the problems that led to the need for the changes are referred to a structurally flawed system rather than leadership. A lot of people disagree with that statement, that indeed new leadership is necessary. It has been reported that Tom Holland is JPAC's longtime scientific director. He's been there quite a while, along with a guy named Johnny Webb. It has been reported that under Holland's leadership, the laboratory has not used DNA as the first step in identifying remains, even though the DNA has been the centerpiece of similar efforts worldwide for more than a decade. Lumpkin did say that Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel was putting the director of the new agency under the Office of Secretary of Defense because you don't want to blame failures on a structurally flawed system. You want somebody accountable for what the process is taking place and the failures that have taken place in the past. Even Ann Mills Griffiths from the National League of Families has called the infighting between the two agencies as destructive bickering. I want to give you some, so we're waiting to see what's going to happen. Again, the agency hasn't even been named yet. They don't have a name for it. But I do want to tell you what some current events are in the issue. And I want to tell you that just on July last month, we had a delegation from Vietnam that came and visited our country. They had a major Minister of Defense, Lieutenant General Khan. He visited the U.S. as part of Vietnam's effort to energize the National Steering Committee, which is an organization formed a year ago to coordinate and centralize Vietnam's efforts to recover and account for its personnel lost during the Vietnam War. About 6 months ago, Joe Violante, our National Legislative Director, was asked to attend a meeting with a delegation from Vietnam. And it was the same thing. He went there to talk about POWs and MIAs. And what they wanted to talk about was information we knew about their POWs and MIAs. And as astounding as that may be, they believe we're holding their POWs from the Vietnam War. And as an act of good faith, they want us to come up with more information on their POWs. Now, it's no secret that in Vietnam, during the war, the Vietnam, even civilians, they were meticulous about identifying Americans and prisoners. They have photos, they have museums, they have pictures of our soldiers with their name tags on. And again, they will not give us access to those museums and that information they very well could give us. However, they send delegations over here and they want us to give them information about their prisoners of war and their missing in action. Now, as I guess, I know in years past, it's been quite a few years ago now, the Vietnam Veterans of America organization, they did a big campaign. If you had any information or photos, and they were asking U.S. veterans that had served in Vietnam, if you had information about any of Vietnam's missing, photos, artifacts, helmets, they wanted, the VVA was asking you to come forward with it, and as a show of good faith, give them what we know, what we have over here. And maybe they would be more cooperative with us and open their doors to their museums and their information that they have. And I guess I'm sort of asking that again today of the people that are in this room. Any information we have that could possibly help them and their identification process, they're asking for it. And they have thousands and thousands of missing in action. And for those of you that were there and saw what happened, you can understand why they have thousands and thousands of missing of their own soldiers. So their delegation came in July, and again, they're asking us to assist them. Now, General Kuhn, when he was here last month, he did return several personal effects of U.S. airmen captured during the war, and that were subsequently those released during Operation Homecoming. VFW, this was announced by the DPMO. They provided 2 interpreters to support at the VFW's National Convention held in June in St. Louis. There was a delegation of 12 representatives from Russia, Russian veteran service organizations that participated in the event. And they were supporting this event. Of course, we have a U.S.-Russian committee that are trying to work and identify American soldiers that may be held in the Soviet Union. We all heard rumors about Korea and China, and the U.S. prisoners were taken to Russia and never seen again or heard from. And the same thing with Vietnam. So VFW put on quite an event to try to strengthen our ties with the Russian veteran service organizations, and they're hoping it will provide important assistance to our work to account for our missing personnel. Work being done in World War II missing. There was a Dr. Ian Spurgeon from DPMO. He completed a 2-week research trip to the Air Force Historical Research Agency at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. Collected primary and secondary sources for cases of missing airmen. Spurgeon gathered digital scans of approximately 60,000 pages of aircraft accident reports for use by World War II analysts. They also copied mission reports and unit histories for specific cases in Italy, Germany, the Philippines, and England. He also gathered unit histories and air operation reports related to several Vietnam War air losses in Vietnam and Laos. Regarding the Korean War, in support of the oral history program, DPMO analysts attended 2 veterans reunions. The 1st Cavalry Division met in Chicago, and the 24th Regimental Combat Team of the 25th Infantry Division held their annual meeting in Augusta, Georgia in July. There were more than 300 veterans in attendance in the 1st Cavalry Division reunion, and 13 of them were Korea War era, and 31 who are still unaccounted for. Information useful for accounting will be placed in case files and forwarded to JPAC and the service casualty offices. And in Southeast Asia, of course, Vietnam. DPMO recently sent an analyst to the jungles of Vietnam in search of U.S. servicemen unaccounted for from the Vietnam War. Lieutenant Colonel Tom Stevenson joined a 9-man JPAC team deployed to central Vietnam. They flew to several provinces in a Russian helicopter in pursuit of 16 U.S. losses. While on the ground, they hiked and cut their way through difficult terrain in Da Nang and westward to the Laotian border in their search for the missing men. More than an observer, Stevenson was the lead analyst on 4 cases and conducted witness interviews and surveys, completing formal reporting requirements and updating the decision reports for each case. As a trip highlight, Stevenson personally escorted 2 U.S. Marine combat veterans at Khe Sanh as they searched for fellow Marines unaccounted for from this major battle in April 1968. More and more I'm hearing reports of DPMO actually taking witnesses, veterans that were witness to certain battles, actually bringing them on these searches for missing soldiers in Southeast Asia. And I've heard recently one case where there was a witness who saw a guy one of our soldiers get killed. He knows exactly where he was, and for like 3 years he kept telling them, "You're going to the wrong place to look for this guy." And I understand he was recently one of these guys that was taken on and was able to go directly to the site and pinpoint where the site is. And I'm pretty sure they found the remains they were looking for. Time is sort of running out in Southeast Asia because the soil over there is so erosive. A lot of the bones, it's been 45 years now, and a lot of the bones just evaporate and deteriorate. And so that's another problem. And some of these advocates from Korea POWs and World War II POWs, they want to know why all this attention, or the majority of attention, is being given to Vietnam POWs. And again, Ann Mills Griffiths from the National League of Families responded by saying, "Look, Korea and World War II, you guys never did anything about finding your POW. It was the Vietnam era that actually brought forward this accounting agenda. And you guys have to stand in line," is what she basically said. And that sounds a little hard, but again, time is running out on Vietnam POWs and missions. I think Larry had something.
Just to change the subject real fast. Some of the things that you can keep the POW issue in front of the people, go to the businesses in your areas. If they have a flagpole outside and you don't see a POW, go in there, talk to them. I've done that many times, and I've got a lot of places that now have POW flags. Get that flag out there. Although the POW issue has kind of faded in people's minds, it does remind them that yes, there is still a POW issue there. That flag flying from flagpoles means a lot. It means that we as Americans have not forgotten and will never forget. This issue probably will not be settled in our time at all. And as Vincent said, the World War II remains are practically all gone. They're diminished. One of the other things that I've done in the past is go to schools, talk to high schools. When they ask you to come over for a Veterans Day ceremony or something, mention about the POW issue too. You don't have to go lengthy, but bring it up. Every time you can bring up that issue, bring it up. You don't have to be knowledgeable. Just bring it up and say, like I say, I'm an American soldier. I serve my country. and all my brothers and sisters aren't home. I want them home.
Okay, I also wanted to talk about, this is something that was really astounding to me. Every year I try to go to the National Alliance of Families. They have an annual forum, and that coincides with the Defense Department, the DPMO briefing on the POW MIA, new information, new news. And what came out, Lynn O'Shea is sort of the investigative researcher for the National Alliance of Families. And she just came out with a new book called Abandoned in Place. And in this, and at that forum that I was at, she mentioned a POW camp in Laos called Nam Murat. And you can go on the internet and check this out. A lot of the information is still classified. A lot of it has been redacted, but there's a lot of information there you can see about this. Again, the POW camp was called Nam Murat, and I'll spell that. N-H-O-M-M-A-R-R-O-T-T, Nam Murat. Back in 1980, when already our government was saying, no, all the POWs are home or they're dead, we had a lot of information that they had a live POW camp in Laos, and the name of the camp was Nam Murat. We had people, actually a refugee that took 3 polygraphs and passed every one, stating that he knows there were live American POWs being held there. We also had signal intelligence. These are messages that we intercepted, stating and verifying that they had between 18 to 30 live American POW. Now this is 1980, and we also had satellite intelligence that had the escape and evasion signals they picked up by satellite. Now when you're in the military and specific air crew, you're given specific escape and evasion techniques and tactics that you are taught. A couple of those tactics is if you're on the ground and you would do a K, disrupt the surface, ground surface somewhere, so that reconnaissance aircraft and even satellite could pick up the K. And some people would put a walking K. In other words, you're on the ground so that a rescue team, search and rescue team, wouldn't be drawn into an ambush. You put a little tail on a foot on the one leg of the K. But a walking K is one of the signals that they are taught. And also, you're given authenticator codes, which are basically 4 digits, and there may be 2 letters in front of the 4-digit code. That's saying it's authentic. Those are highly held secret codes that nobody knows except you and the people that are looking for you. And anyway, at this, they had personal people saying, we know they're there, the past several polygraph tests. We had signal intelligence saying, corroborating that they had live Americans, and they also picked up signals that in this camp, they found a K and a 52. Now the 52 has multiple meanings in that signal intelligence area. It could mean that you're a B-52 crew being held there. It could mean that there are 52 prisoners there. Or it could be a signal if our bombing raids were conducted by B-52s. That was a signal to them that, hey, we're Americans, live Americans down here. Don't bomb this area over us. So we had all different forms of intelligence stating that we have live Americans in this POW camp in Laos called Nam Murat. So what happened? President Reagan, Ron Reagan, came into office. Now this was in December of 1980. January of 1981, President Ron Reagan came into office. And basically he was quoted as saying, we have to bring them home. And there was a mission developed, a rescue mission. And what was going to take place, they were going to send in a Delta force to recon this alleged POW camp. And they gave this crew so much time to get there. It was actually about 40 days, I believe. And to get there, take photos of the camp, and then when they get back, they were, with photos and recon information, they were going to establish a rescue effort. What happened, the crew just was not making good progress at all. And they kept, you've been there a week, how come you haven't gone but 2 miles? And they came up with, well, of course it was uncorroborated, but they said we had a firefight with Laotian service forces, or some of the crew came down with malaria, and the crew was being deleted, the number of personnel. And anyway, when they did get back eventually, it was longer than they thought it would take. They analyzed that they either went to the wrong camp, because the pictures, they took almost 396 photos. They were blurry, and they didn't correspond with anything what satellite imagery had shown of the camp itself. So they believe they went to the wrong camp, or they surmised that maybe this was a rescue crew that lost their nerve and purposely didn't go to where they were trying to get to. Those are all possibilities. But when they got back, you know how long people in the Pentagon can keep a secret? Because this all had to go through highly sensitive agencies, national security agencies. If one person in the Pentagon knows about it, it can be a secret. If more than one person knows about it, and there were plenty of people that knew about this mission, it's no longer a secret that too many people knew about it. And they were actually at Fort Bragg, 82nd Airborne Forces were going to construct an actual rescue mission when this recon team got back. But with the information that they came back with, it was basically worthless. And by then, after 2 or 3 months, too many people knowing about it, if we sent another team in, it would be a suicide mission. And everybody knew that in the Pentagon. But to come that close, with all that information and intelligence, that we knew they had live POWs in that camp, and to come away with absolutely nothing, that's how close we were. If we could get, personally, I believe we left live men over there. I think we left a lot of them over there. And, but some people still to this day, they don't believe in the, and of course our Defense Department is still denying that we left anybody over there alive. So, and again, if you want to check that out, what I just talked about is Nom Marot, NHOM-MARROTT. Just Google it, or any search engine you have, and you'll find a lot of information on what I just talked about.